Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this material today, because honestly, we're going to explore a concept that completely rewrites how we understand modern power. We're looking at the architecture of portable power. You see, historically, power was practically glued to a specific title, right? We automatically think of presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, or directors. But in our hyper-connected, massively globalized world, influence has completely evolved. It's no longer just about holding a fancy title in a specific building. It doesn't just sit there tied to one desk, one institution, or even one country anymore. Which brings us to a massive million-dollar question. Who exactly are the global elite? Okay, first things first, I want you to completely toss out that Hollywood image you might have in your head. Seriously, forget the whole shadowy, smoke-filled room of puppet masters secretly pulling the strings of the universe. That's just a myth. The reality of how modern power actually operates is way more structural, incredibly complex, and, frankly, a whole lot more fascinating.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. Redefining the elite. 2. Power of mobility. 3. Crossing sectors. 4. The decision ecosystem. 5. Capital and influence. And finally, 6. Influence without authority.
Starting with Section 1, Redefining the Elite. Let's separate the myth from the reality.
To really wrap our heads around global power, we absolutely have to ditch the idea of a single, unified monolith. Instead, the global elite really refers to individuals who operate across multiple systems of influence, rather than acting as one giant, coordinated club. We're not looking at an organized syndicate here. We are looking at cross-system actors. And that's an absolutely crucial distinction to make. It's not about a unified body, it's about highly capable individuals whose entire careers weave right through the fabric of our global systems.
So, what do these cross-system actors actually look like out there in the wild? Well, let's break down their key characteristics. First off, cross-border mobility. They aren't tied down to one geographic spot. They move fluidly. Second, multi-sector experience. These folks might do a stint in government, then seamlessly jump over to the corporate world, and later step into a high-level advisory role at an international NGO. Third, they possess deep institutional access. And fourth, they maintain huge overlapping global professional networks. When you put all four of these traits together, the main theme is portability. These individuals are literally portable power centers, taking their experience and connections right along with them wherever they go.
Moving on to Section 2, the power of mobility. Let's look at how they move between systems.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how you can actually trace the trajectory of how power is accumulated. It's like a path. Let's say, Step 1, an individual starts out in government administration. They learn exactly how the regulatory plumbing works. Then, Step 2, they shift over to a multinational corporation, where they leverage that deep insider knowledge to navigate global markets. Step 3, they transition again, maybe into a global policy organization or a major think tank. By hopping between these totally separate spheres, this single person builds up an incredibly powerful continuity of experience. Modern influence is literally forged by this exact mobility.
And that brings us to the core takeaway here. Knowledge of one system becomes influence in another. It's brilliant when you think about it. When someone leaves public administration for a massive financial institution, they aren't starting from scratch. That movement itself translates their past experience into present influence. Their deep understanding of how System A works gives them a massive strategic edge and real power when they step foot into System B.
Section 3, Crossing Sectors. Let's look at horizontal versus vertical power.
Let's zoom out for a second and compare the old way with the new reality. Traditional power is all about vertical influence. You know the drill, operating strictly within the hierarchy of a single institution. You start at the bottom of the ladder and you grind your way straight to the top. But the modern reality, it's all about horizontal influence. This means operating across different sectors and overlapping roles. It's not a ladder anymore, it's a web. And this horizontal approach is just vastly more expansive, casting a wider net of influence that simply can't be boxed in by one single org chart.
Because of this horizontal spread, we naturally see a ton of institutional overlaps. It's totally common for these individuals to hold multiple roles all at the same time. We're talking corporate leadership while also holding key advisory positions, sitting on institutional boards, and doing high-level policy consultation. Sure, it's an exhausting schedule, but these overlaps create completely unique environments where business, policy, and global governance naturally crash into each other. A prime structural example of this kind of environment is the World Economic Forum. Now, objectively speaking, the WEF is essentially a hub designed to create spaces where business, policy, and global governance can physically intersect. The primary function here is to increase informational access and connectivity. It's absolutely crucial to note that participating in cross-sector environments like this does not guarantee you control over anything, but what it absolutely does guarantee is a massive, unparalleled increase in connectivity and access to high-level information across completely different systems.
Section 4. The decision ecosystem. This is how choices actually emerge. Broadening out our perspective again, we start to see that major global decisions are practically never made in a vacuum. They actually bubble up from a highly interconnected ecosystem. We're talking governments, multinational corporations, financial powerhouses, international organizations, and major research centers. This huge network is constantly interacting. Policy isn't just decreed from on high, it organically emerges through this never-ending stream of meetings, reports, negotiations, and advisory chats back and forth across all these different nodes.
So the big aha moment here is this. Decision-making becomes distributed across networks rather than concentrated in one single location. Now, you might be wondering, why does this actually matter to me? Well, because the choices that dictate your everyday life, stuff like economic policies, tech regulations, trade agreements, they aren't just cooked up in one closed-door government office. They emerge from this highly distributed, wildly interconnected global ecosystem.
Section 5. Capital and influence. We have to talk about the role of finance here. To really grasp how this whole ecosystem hums along, we need to look at the financial engines driving it, like BlackRock and JP Chase. Giants like these sit perfectly at the intersection of global markets, massive corporations, and sovereign governments. Take BlackRock. Because they operate right at that junction, the sheer volume of capital they manage literally determines what sectors of the economy expand and which ones contract. And then you have JP Chase, dynamically allocating capital across these vast global networks. Their role is incredibly potent because they shape structural priorities just by funding them, driving global connectivity in the process.
And this brings us to a really profound realization. Capital allocation is itself a form of systemic influence. Let's be clear, the role of these massive financial institutions isn't officially political. They aren't in Congress passing laws. But their ability to decide what gets funded, what becomes a global priority, and what gets starved of capital, that has profound, far-reaching structural consequences for all of us.
Finally, Section 6, Influence without authority. Let's bring it all together for the final synthesis. We've reached the climax of the explainer, and this is where we completely redefine what power even means today. One of the craziest things about these modern systems is that individuals can dramatically shape global outcomes without ever holding formal executive authority or winning an election. How is that even possible? Well, it goes right back to the traits we've been tracking. Cultivating deep expertise, gaining access to highly exclusive information, snagging key advisory roles, and building incredibly broad institutional relationships. When you leverage those 4 things, formal, assigned authority almost becomes secondary.
Just consider this distinction for a second. Authority is assigned. Influence is accumulated. Take a moment and really let that massive shift in perspective sink in. In our globalized world, the slow, methodical accumulation of influence across different sectors often carries way more weight than whatever official title happens to be printed on your business card. Ultimately, the global elite is not some centralized command center. It's a pattern, a continuous pattern of mobility, connectivity, and cross-sector interaction. The global elite exists within these systems, not hovering above them. Influence flows directly through the empty spaces and the vital connections between these massive institutions. Power just isn't about sitting alone at the top of a pyramid anymore. It's about standing right at the center of a very busy web.
Which leaves us with one final, very provocative thought to end on today. If true influence really does flow through the spaces between systems, who controls the meaning of the narratives they create? Think about that for a bit, because we are going to dive exactly into that question in our next explainer on narrative wars. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the architecture of portable power. I'll see you next time.